Poisoning the news that we are fed with those tainted sources. All we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative is the truth of mass suffering, injustice, and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Hey there, Jordan Chariton live. Status Coup. It is, I don't even know. What is it, Wednesday? Wednesday, December, January 19th. The year is 2022. If you haven't noticed, I'm a little overworked and forgetting time and thoughts. Kind of like our president, Joe Biden, who just gave a nearly 2-hour, I guess you'd call it a press conference. I'm not sure. It was something. It was something. So Colin has cut together a whole lot of clips from the press conference. We didn't get to all of it because it only ended a short time ago. But wow, just watching that thing was really, really staggering. Between the delusion, between the incoherence, between the lying, it was something. It was something. I mean, I'll try to be fair, but there was a lot of cringe in this press conference. And frankly, after about, I'd say an hour, if you were watching it, when he started saying, how much longer you guys got to go? How much longer you guys want to go? I mean, you could just literally feel behind that wall, behind Biden, his people being like, abort, abort, abort. No, don't give any more time. Don't give any more time. It went, in my view, that bad. So we'll get to all that. I believe Tina will be joining me in a little bit. So stay tuned. I haven't heard different from her. So Tina should be joining me. So stay tuned for that. Before we get to some of these clips and reactions, please do your patriotic duty. Smash that like button, thumbs up button right under the video. The more people that press the like button right under me, the more people that will see the live stream. Share this stream. Sharing is caring. If you could post the stream, post a link to the live stream on your social media. The more people that like it, the more people that share, the more people that comment, the more people that will see this. So please do that. So I don't know even where to start, Colin. Tina, I think, will be joining us in a few minutes, but we'll start without her. I want to start with, I guess, him talking about the rescue plan. Colin, if you have that clip.
The American Rescue Plan and other actions we've taken, we've seen record job creation, record economic growth in the past year. Now, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we're about to make a record investment in rebuilding America to take us to be the #1 best infrastructure in the world. Well, now we're way below that. We'll be creating better jobs for millions of people, modernizing our roads, our bridges, our highways, our ports, our airports, everything from making clean water, removing lead pipes, that every American can turn on a faucet and drink clean water. Urban and rural and suburban communities.
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is, in fairness to Biden, all the presidents use these talking points. Oh, unemployment is down to a historic low, this and that. To be clear, an overwhelming amount of the jobs that have come back, are in non-living wage industries. No offense. Hospitality, bars, restaurants, hotels. So when he's talking about this economic boom, Tina, you with me?
I am with you.
Perfect. When he's talking about this, the unemployment is at an all-time low and all these wonderful things. I don't know, maybe on the number is correct, but as far as I could tell, reading those jobs numbers, reading where those jobs are coming back, talking to people, traveling, we live in the same economic Hunger Games that we did before this pandemic, only he's dressing it up as record economic numbers.
Yeah, he definitely overstated the truth there. I mean, there's a couple things we need to look at. Number one, the jobs that have come back are very low wages. I've yet to see him address the rabid income inequality that the country's been facing for years now. And this has been going on for decades, just getting steadily worse. So I do think it's ridiculous for him to talk about how he's, done all this work on childhood poverty, how, these great jobs are coming back, how great everything is, because it's just not the case. A big chunk of the country is living in poverty, and that hasn't changed fundamentally at all.
Absolutely. And also, when he talks about the infrastructure deal, and this is what I always talk about, that, Republicans do, but Democrats, they give you crumbs and rump roast and then dress it up as transformational. The infrastructure deal, it'll build some bridges and stuff like that. I'm not saying it won't. Experts have said we needed like upwards of $3 to $4 trillion to keep up with crumbling infrastructure. This infrastructure deal is $500 billion in new money. $500 billion in new money. So I have no idea, it will build some things, but this infrastructure deal is pennies in the bucket for what we actually need. And by the way, it's privatization on steroids. This infrastructure deal is literally selling public waterways, sewer systems, transportation to private corporations in order to get funds to fund more infrastructure.
Yeah, it's bad. It's a bad deal. Look, pennies on the dollar is putting it mildly. We've had crumbling infrastructure building up now for decades as well. Nothing's been done about it. And so whatever little bit that he's throwing at this is not even a third of enough of what needs to be done. Again, here the problem is we're so far down the line of devastation that these little tiny gains that we've come forward aren't enough to get us really anywhere that's worth discussing. And I just really wish that he would be honest about that, because I don't see anybody in Congress or the president being honest about that fact. They're saying, yay, they're cheerleading, right? But the reality is if you're looking at $26,000, $27,000 a year as bringing people, a household of 4 people out of poverty, you're crazy. That's insane.
Tina, I love you, but I'm going to take you up the screen for a second so Colin can troubleshoot, because your mic is wrong and something's wrong with your connection. So Colin will handle that as I come back. All right. So the other, there were so many clips that were just honestly staggering. So he tells you the economy is doing wonderful. He tells you the infrastructure deal is terrific and wonderful, blah, 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 blah. So I just want to be clear, and this isn't all on Biden. This is also on journalists there. Yesterday, we had almost 1.2 million COVID cases in the country, almost 1.2 million. Okay. By the way, I don't even know if we could trust the COVID case count anymore. It's probably a lot more than that, because there's at-home tests that aren't being reported, people not feeling well, but not testing, etc. But according to the numbers that were put out, there was 1.2 million COVID cases yesterday. There were 2,990 deaths yesterday. So almost 3,000 deaths yesterday. Again, I'm just being honest. I don't even know if that number is completely accurate. Could be more. Okay. It was almost treated like this entire press conference almost as an afterthought. Like there was some questions on COVID, but literally 3,000 people dying right now Omicron, it seems to be getting a slightly better in New York, DC, some of the earliest hit cities and states, but it will be traveling to other. I know there's this mentality like, let's just get back to normal, let it rip, whatever. This is not over, even though there's a lot of people who want it to be over and want to declare it over. I'm just keeping it real. It's not over. It's not a normal thing when 3,000 people are dying a day. That was yesterday. Okay. Again, 1.2 million cases. If you watch that whole press conference, there were a couple questions on it. It wasn't really treated, as far as I could tell, as an urgent situation anymore. So you kind of have to wonder about that. How you have 3,000 people that died yesterday. How you have 1.2 million cases. Oh, by the way, he said 75% of the country was fully vaccinated. That's not true. According to the New York Times chart, like 62 or 63% of the country is fully vaccinated. And who the hell knows what fully vaccinated even means anymore? Is it 2 doses? Is it 2 doses plus a booster? So that stood out to me, that for the entire press conference, there are a couple questions, but really this was not treated urgently. I didn't hear one reporter mention the numbers that I just told you. Again, almost 3,000 people died yesterday. So deaths are going up and cases are still crazy high. But Colin, if we could play that clip, number 2, Biden on what he's done about COVID.
COVID-19, Omicron has now been challenging us in a way that it's the new enemy. But while it's cause for concern, it's not cause for panic. We've been doing everything we can, learning and adapting as fast as we can, and preparing for a future beyond the pandemic. All I know that after almost 2 years of physical, emotional, and psychological weight of this pandemic and the impact it's had on everyone, for many of us, it's been too much to bear. We're in a very different place now, though. We have the tools: vaccines, boosters, masks, tests, pills, to save lives and keep businesses and schools open. 75% of adults are fully vaccinated. We've gone from 90 million adults with no shots in arms last summer and down to 35 million with no shots as of today. And we're adding about 9 million more vaccinations each week. We're going to stick with our vaccination efforts because vaccinations work. So get vaccinated, please, and get your booster. Look, we're also increasing testing. Should we have done more testing earlier? Yes, but we're doing more now. We've gone from 0 at-home tests a year ago to 375 million tests on the market in just this month. If you buy a test at a store, your insurance will reimburse you. On top of that, we're making 1 billion at-home tests available for you to order and be delivered to your home for free. Just visit covidtest.gov to know how to get that free test kit to your home. In addition, there are 20,000 sites where you can get tested in person for free now. And now we have more treatments that for people to keep people out of the hospital than any other point in the pandemic, including life-saving antiviral pills. We purchased 20 million of these new Pfizer pills, more than any country in the world. The bottom line on COVID-19 is that we're in a better place than we've been and have been thus far, clearly better than a year ago. We're not going back to lockdowns. We're not going back to closing schools. Schools should stay open because the American Rescue Plan, we provided to states $130 billion to keep our students and educators safe and schools open. Funding for ventilation systems in schools, social distancing, hygiene for classrooms and the school buses. In addition, we've added another $10 billion for COVID-19 tests to be able to be administered at schools. Right. Many states and school districts have spent this money very well. Unfortunately, some haven't. I encourage the states and school districts that use the funding to protect our children and keep our schools open. Use it.
You can pull that.
COVID-19 is not going to give up and accept things. It's just not going to go away immediately. But I'm not going to give up and accept things as they are now. Some people may call what's happening now the new normal. I call it a job not yet finished. It will get better. We're moving toward a time when COVID-19 won't disrupt our daily lives, where COVID-19 won't be a crisis, but something to protect against and a threat. Look, we're not there yet, but we will get there.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. So there's a lot of things wrong with that. First of all, to be fair, of course, in theory, we're better off. We're better off than we were in 2020 when there was no vaccine. But there's a whole lot of things that either he is literally delusional or he's just lying. First of all, they're just a year into his administration. This came out today. Biden administration to distribute 400 million N95 masks to the public for free. That's a year into his presidency. They're releasing 400 million N95 masks. I would argue, not only is that incompetence, we should be releasing billions of N95 masks. But this doesn't get a lot of coverage, folks. And remember to smash that like button, share this stream. The more people that press the like button, the more people that share will get the audience even higher. Remember, NAFTA and other trade deals decimated our United States manufacturing capacity. So we had to rely on China and a whole lot of other countries to provide us with masks, to provide us with face shields, gowns, gloves, PPE. So a year into his presidency, they're offering 400 million N95 masks. That's completely inadequate and too late. I mean, I'm happy that at least we're getting 400 million, but that's completely inadequate. Secondly, and this isn't completely on Biden, his CDC cannot actually give a coherent message. It took them, again, now we're going into year 3 of this pandemic. Just recently, they said, oh yeah, cloth masks, kind of like no better really than a facial decoration. Better than nothing. Not really going to protect you. Year 3, they're saying that. Hello? And they won't actually tell you, yes, N95 is the top. N95 is the top mask you should be wearing if you could tolerate it. And it's not easy. It's not easy. A lot of people can't breathe in N95 for long periods of time, but it is the most protective. They can't even get their messaging straight on that. Secondly, when Biden says, casually says, yeah, should we have put out tests earlier, this and that? The Biden administration, this came out in Vanity Fair recently. The Biden administration was given a proposal in October of last year for free rapid tests for the holiday. Free rapid tests for the holidays. With Omicron cases spreading like wildfire, the White House is finally taking steps to make free antigen tests available. But over the fall, Vanity Fair learned it dismissed a bold plan to ramp up rapid testing of in front of the holidays. Well, who's coming up with these ideas to deny and reject in October rapid testing? Do they not at the CDC have scientists that are looking into variants that are emerging around the world, mutations that are emerging around the world? They literally rejected it in October, and then Omicron started spreading in December. Listen, yes, this is a novel virus. Not everything is known, but enough is known now that you don't gamble. We should have been working, even if there was no new variant, we should have been working, Biden should have been working at creating, you're talking billions of tests. People should have more than enough tests at home to test before they go to family gatherings, before they go to various things. If they're not feeling well, before they go see, I'm going to my nephew's birthday party over this coming weekend. I have a few tests that it took a while to get. It's like a Hunger Games to get tests. But most people don't even have that. So they had the opportunity in October to start more rapid at-home tests. And according to Vanity Fair, his administration rejected it. Now, have they done some things well? Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, a lot more people are vaccinated now. I think the rollout was a lot better than what Trump's clown show was doing. But for him to stand up there and say we're a lot better off than we were, this and that, yeah, of course we're a lot better off than we were because there was no vaccine for over a year. But we're not where we should be, and Biden, by the way, one of the things he ran on, rightly so, was Trump's disastrous COVID response, and essentially the reckless behavior Trump was doing, basically laissez-faire about mask wearing, laissez-faire about social distancing, yada, 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 putting out misinformation as president. Listen, no president's going to be perfect, Biden or not. But the fact that a year into his presidency, we're now sending out N95 masks for free, the fact that they rejected a plan to send more rapid tests for free to people's home, the fact that they have two separate rollouts going on, one for free at-home testing, one getting reimbursed through your insurance, which is a friggin' bureaucratic mess for the people who are lucky enough to be insured. You have to fill out paperwork and stuff like that to be reimbursed. That leaves the uninsured screwed. And by the way, Omicron, which again, I couldn't believe it. It wasn't even mentioned. Again, I'll repeat, yesterday there was 1.2 million cases in this country, and that's probably an undercount. There was nearly 3,000 deaths in this country yesterday, most of which are unvaccinated people. But you kind of have to wonder, does he really believe what he's saying? Or is he just trying to, put lipstick on a pig, as my former friend Sarah Palin used to say? I don't know. Let's move on. And keep smashing that like button. Keep sharing. We appreciate super chats. I'll read them at the end. Shout out to the community. Cat Faye just said. Please, like button, share, all those good things. Colin, can we then go to his comments on the Build Back Better plan?
My Build Back Better plan will address the biggest cost of working families face every day. No other plan will do more to lower the cost for American families. It cuts the cost for childcare. Many families, including the people sitting in this room, if they have children and they're working full-time, many families pay up to $14,000 a year for childcare in big cities, less than that in smaller ones. My plan cuts that in half. That will not only be a game changer for so many families' budgets, but it will mean so much for the nearly 2 million women who've left the workforce during the pandemic because of things like childcare.
So I played that clip. There's nothing particularly remarkable about that clip. Tina, better?
I think so.
Hey, yo, wonderful.
The internet here is always problematic.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk to Los Angeles about this because it's unacceptable. So, Tina, let me backtrack because I know you have opinions on a lot of things. First of all, and I'm not interested I'm not debating anti-vaxxers. If there's trolls and stuff, I don't care. It was remarkable to me. We were texting.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't mentioned that there was 1.2 million cases of coronavirus in the country yesterday, which is an undercount. It wasn't mentioned that there was nearly 3,000 deaths yesterday, which again, I couldn't tell you if that's the exact number. It's probably an undercount.
Yeah.
There were some questions on COVID, but it was not treated as urgent.
No.
And it seems to me it was not treated as urgent because there has been kind of like this coordinated between the Democratic Party, Biden, and the media to basically make it like the fourth or fifth story in newscasts.
Yeah.
And kind of have this mentality like, well, we got to learn to live with it. I'm not calling to lock shit down and, tie you up. But I don't know. Yesterday, nearly 3,000 people died, 1.2 million cases. The clip I just played, he's saying casually, yeah, we probably should have gotten started on testing sooner. I mean, in October, they were offered a plan for free rapid tests. They turned it down. They're just sending out N95 masks a year into his presidency. By the way, it should be in the billions, but since we offshored all our jobs through NAFTA, we probably don't even have the manufacturing capacity here to make that many. I mean, I could go on and on. There's so many problems. I mean, you saw it.
It's like an onion.
Yeah. You've recently been sick, so you know that what a Hunger Games it was to go get tested. It just seems like, I don't know if he's delusional or they're just trying to put lipstick on a pig, but it's still very an urgent situation. And
I think it is.
I'm not convinced based on what they have done, based on the CDC's messaging. I'm not convinced if there's a next variant, the response is going to be that much better.
No, all they seem to care about is the economy. And I would, given my experience, I would like kind of sort of urge people to realize that COVID isn't solely a respiratory disease, right? So their main focus has always been, your lungs, being on a ventilator, all of these things. But there's all of these other underlying conditions that you could end up with, like I have. I'm dealing with like a weird nerve damage thing, right? So I've been able to breathe fine. I haven't had any respiratory illness. I'm never going to end up in the hospital on the ventilator, right? But I still am dealing with something that I think is something other than mild. I can't walk upstairs very well right now because of the nerve pain. So
to be clear, because the audience, not everybody in the audience knows, you have COVID. Well, you had it. Yeah. You're not positive anymore, but you had it within the past 2 weeks. However much you want to share. You didn't have to be hospitalized, but it did knock you out in terms of you were sleeping a lot.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. There's a lot of fatigue involved. So everybody that tells you there's fatigue, they're correct on that. You just want to sleep a lot. But I think this idea, like I thought maybe I'm losing my mind with this pain I'm having in my foot when it started. I'm like, this is so weird. What could this be? It almost felt like, did I fracture my toe? But I've been holed up in bed. How did I fracture my toe? Right. So you go through this whole thing. But it turns out that the doctor basically said, listen, it's not just respiratory, it attacks your entire system. The coronavirus attacks all systems, not just your lungs. So there are other things that you can end up dealing with. And I say long-term, we don't even know what all of those things are yet, right? Who knows what to sort of anecdotally put it, who knows what the shingles version is of COVID, right? If you don't know what I'm saying, shingles is something that you can get if you've had the chickenpox virus years later because the virus is dormant in your body and your spine. And shingles is this horrible, painful thing that you could have, right? So there are long-term consequences from every viral infection. And I don't think we should be so laissez-faire about what those things are, especially with a new virus that we still don't know to this day what it's all about. So I was really kind of off-put by both Biden and the media with how they were talking about that. Like, I think his most important thing he wanted to get across was that 95% of the schools are open. I've talked to some parents. They're not okay with that, actually. Some of them would prefer to have distance learning. They want to keep their kids safe, especially if they have other children in the household that are, younger than 5. Can't get vaccinated.
Also, it doesn't get talked about. I mean, this is anecdotal, but my aunt is a teacher and one of my best friends is a teacher. Both of them have basically told me, no, there's no learning going on in schools right now. It's just babysitting. Between the teachers that are out, the teachers that are out, the students that are out, you have literally, I just saw a story where a police officer is substituting in a school. I think I saw, I literally was told by a friend that in his school in a pinch, I'm not disrespecting a janitor, but a janitor was standing in as a substitute. So there's no learning. Yeah. I don't think there's one size fits all. I'm not saying go back to remote schooling all over the country, but just when they say 95% of schools are open, what they're leaving out is, in a whole lot of those schools, there's actually no learning going on. So
and a lot of COVID getting caught. Like, people are getting sick. The teachers, the kids are getting sick. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. Even if we just did distance learning for 2 weeks as an option, that would make more sense to me. I don't understand why we're forcing kids and teachers into classrooms where they're all getting sick and you're ending up with, some of the outcomes that you're talking about. How is a janitor supposed to teach calculus? I mean,
it's just crazy to me, and it gives me it's just crazy to me, and it really gives me tinges of what I've experienced reporting on the Flint water crisis for 5 years. By the way, if you missed it, I broke a major story on Monday. It's in The Guardian. It's at the top of my Twitter page. Colin, if you could put it in the super chat, please retweet, share this story, read this story. The media, shockingly, is ignoring it and burying it. But myself, along with Charlie LaDuff, who's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, we broke that major racketeering financial charges were on the way. But the current Democratic Attorney General of Michigan, by all appearances, has swept those charges under the rug and has chosen not to go forward aggressively going after the financial fraud that led to the water crisis. I digress. But it kind of, watching the press conference, it kind of gave me tinges of what I've been experiencing with the Flint water crisis, because basically the media And the Democratic Party, and of course the Republicans, have just basically said, yeah, it's over. The water's fine. Move on.
Yeah, move
So
on,
like
yeah.
this press conference, again, imagine nearly 3,000 people died yesterday. That's a 9/11. That wasn't even mentioned. 1.2 million
No,
cases.
wasn't mentioned. Yeah, and in fact, they were saying that it was getting better. He was making the case that fewer people were going to be dying, and I'm not sure that's true. What about from the surge we're having now in a few weeks? What are those death numbers going to look like? I doubt they're going to be as low as they are today. I just don't understand why. I mean, I do understand. Let me be clear. It's because the economy. That's all they care about fixing, right? They want to fix the economy. I also loved, speaking of, I also loved his comment on capitalism and exploitation.
Oh no, we're gonna get to that. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. All right. I won't. All right.
Well, also the last thing on COVID, Fauci might have let the cat out of the bag a little bit. Fauci said, I don't know, this week, last week, he basically said, hopefully, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the quote. Hopefully this is like the live virus vaccination, meaning, hopefully more people that are getting it, they have boosted immunity, if they're vaccinated and they get this. So I don't know. I read what he said almost as, all right, I'm not saying I want people to get it, but, let's not close anything. Let's shorten the CDC thing to 5 days. Let's kind of let it,
well, they definitely taken a let it rip attitude with the
absolutely.
with the disease at this point. I mean, there's been no means of slowing it down the last 2 months, I'd say. And we knew this surge was coming. The doctors warned, the epidemiologists were saying Omicron was going to be highly contagious. I mean, so the writing was on the wall, and nothing was done to mitigate it. So my idea is that, yes, I agree with you. Obviously, they're again more concerned about the economy. They know people are going to die. They simply, I mean, also you notice the other thing he's saying, like, get vaccinated. I think part of the reason, the underlying argument there basically is that, well, if the unvaccinated die, maybe that's okay. And, as much as anti-vaxxers drive me up the wall, because most of them are incredibly anti-science and don't really understand half the stuff they're saying, different conversation for a different day. I don't feel that way. That's really inhumane to me, right? We shouldn't be looking at any population group in that format, in my opinion. Absolutely. I think a lot of these folks have been vulnerable to misinformation. I think they really believe the things that they believe, whether they're true or not is sort of tangential to their belief system, right? So a lot of them have been led down a certain path, right? That doesn't make them bad people. It makes them susceptible to stuff that sounds right. And, a lot of folks are angry at the government, rightfully so. They're angry at a system that is keeping them poor, right? Absolutely. For decade after decade. So I understand all of how this is coming together into a perfect storm, but it really kind of upset me that he was so laissez-faire about this population, maybe the ones they're going to be most hurt. So they chose that route. So whatever, I don't care, kind of an attitude.
Yeah. Colin, can we skip over to number 4? His wonderful comment, I'm a capitalist.
Yeah.
I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's exploitation. So I signed an executive order to tackle unfair competition in our economy. And we're going to continue to enforce it, along with working with Congress where we can.
I need it one more time. I need it one more time.
I did too.
One more time.
In my veins.
I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's exploitation. So I signed an executive order to tackle unfair competition in our economy. And we're going to continue to enforce it, along with working with Congress where we can.
Now I want to be fair because I don't want it to make it look like we're just, going after Biden gratuitously. There was one thing he said that was true and I liked, which was, I'm not Bernie Sanders, and we'll get to that later. But the thing I love about this, when he says, I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is exploitation. Very nice. Very, very true. Capitalist president. But do you kind of think that, I don't know, 60 to 75% of your donors in the Democratic Party, to be fair, Republican Party donors too. Do you kind of think those donors, I don't know, half of whom are the monopolists? that, Bezos and Elon Musk and big pharma and, et cetera, et cetera. Do you kind of think that big part of the exploitation is you're not going after those donors? You kind of think big part of the exploitation is you, and not just him, previous presidents too, don't go after Amazon for ripping off smaller businesses. Amazon literally, illegally. Part of their business formula is stealing IP, intellectual property from smaller businesses, creating knockoff products from those small businesses,
booting them off the site.
Yeah, creating a knockoff product on Amazon, then propping up Amazon's knockoff product that they stole the formula from the small business, and then burying the original inventor of the product. So do you kind of think maybe there's a conflict of interest? Great on your executive order to go after monopolies, but you kind of think there's some type of conflict of interest that your biggest donors are the monopolists? Your thoughts?
I'm going to go one step further. I think him saying that that's the only parameter that makes capitalism exploitation is just patently absurd. I could go down a list of many things as to why our system is exploitation. And it's not just lack of competition, right? So I just found the entire phrasing of that to be like, what did he just say? But to your point, yes, that is all true. Amazon's known for that. We can talk about the internet, given our experience 20 minutes ago, right? So the internets are all cartels in this country. They've divided up the map. They're supposed to be competition, right? There's multiple companies, but they don't go into each other's territories. I have exactly one company that I can go to for internet, and they charge me $120 a month for shoddy service. But I have no other option, So competition in that regard would help this situation. But I do think that workers will continue to be exploited under our system, because our capitalist system, even with the competition added back in, is rigged to the capitalists, right? Insider trading is another thing we can look at. Why is it that all the Congress folks, when they engage in stock trades, make all of this money at a better rate than anybody else does? Well, it's because they're trading on insider information. I don't think that's a controversial statement. Hedge funds do the same thing. Anybody that's doing really well in the stock market is more or less trading on insider information. Yes, the SEC knows it. They don't do anything about it. We have, a situation where you have regulatory capture, where a lot of the SEC folks that are supposed to be the watchdogs are banksters. So, there's that revolving door from industry into government into industry. Again, this is also adding to all of the anger that's out there in the population, the distrust for government, which also leads back into why so many people are becoming anti-vaccine, right? I mean, there's so many problems right now with what's happening and how these things are all interwoven. And Biden just seems absolutely clueless.
Absolutely. And by the way, I wrote it down also. Not only did they not mention that nearly 3,000 people died yesterday, that they had 1.2 million COVID cases, not one question, and I'm not shocked by this, but it should be noted, not one question from this brave, intrepid Washington press corps of all these cosmopolitan journalists who climbed the ladder by giving out political sexual favors. I don't mean literally, but you kind of get the point. Who climbed the ladder by kissing politicians' asses, doing puff pieces, selling off as breaking news, basically bullshit spin that they're fed for the politicians. Not one of them asked about, hey, any thoughts on the exploding strike wave in America? Right. Any thoughts on workers that are striking throughout this country? Any thoughts on the fact that Starbucks workers just successfully unionized the first Starbucks in America? Any thought on Amazon in Bessemer, Alabama, illegally sabotaging election? So much so that they now have to redo the election, I think at the end of this month or February.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on the Amazon workers in Staten Island that are trying to unionize and experiencing massive union busting? Very interesting in his little monopoly spiel. That there was no talk about, frankly, I mean, it's not the strike wave of like the
workers.
Yeah, it's not the strike wave of the 1940s, but in the last decade or so, this is a huge increase in strike activity, in unionization efforts. Not one question from the media. A lot of questions from the media about Russia and Ukraine.
And inflation. I think this ties into it too, because there's two things going on here. When he talks about the thing that he was centering on had to do with price, right? Consumer prices. So he's talking about helping out the consumer, right? He wants them to get cheaper goods so that their dollar goes further, this kind of rigmarole. He's not addressing the exploitation of workers because nobody wants to address that, right? If they have to actually raise wages, that's going to come out of not necessarily increased prices because those are max. It's going to come out of the salaries of the upper management, of the donor class, the plutonymy, who is giving money to, all of these various politicians. So this is like the giant elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. But you can't keep wages suppressed as they are now. It's not tenable. At some point, I don't even see how it could get any worse. A $15 minimum wage, and we've talked about this. You can't pay rent on that here.
Well, first of all, if a $15 minimum wage went into effect nationally tomorrow or today,
it'd be stepped
it's
in.
over 5 years. It's over 5 years. So New York passed a $15 minimum wage. It's still not technically $15 in New York,
right?
Because it's been staggered over years. Same thing in other states that pass it. So by the time the dream of a $15 minimum wage, it's actually $15 minimum wage. Milk is going to be $8 a freaking carton.
Right.
So it's insane. And the wage increases that he's citing, they're not because of anything he did in particular.
Right.
It's because workers finally have some damn leverage.
That's right.
Right. Because of the pandemic, supply chain issues, et cetera, et cetera. So again, he's trying to make it seem like some of his neoliberal policies are why wages are up. That's just not the case. Wages.
Yeah, and they're barely up. They're not even up. I mean, he was making it sound like they were way up, and I'm like, yeah, no, dude, they're still not livable, not even close. You would have to double minimum wage in the city of LA to even begin to discuss what living normally would look like at this point. Absolutely. And it wasn't always this way in this country. I mean, we've sort of lockstep to this place since I'd say the early 1970s,
Absolutely. And everybody, remember, press that like button, share this live stream. Super chats are very welcome. I'll read them later. So this was one of my favorites. Number 5. I didn't overpromise, if you got that, Colin.
I didn't overpromise, but I have probably outperformed what anybody thought would happen. The fact of the matter is that we're in a situation where we have made enormous progress. You mentioned the number of deaths from COVID. Well, it was 3 times that not long ago. It's coming down. Everything's changing. It's getting better. Look, I didn't overpromise, but I think if you take a look at what we've been able to do, you'd have to acknowledge we made enormous progress. But one of the things that I think is something that, one thing I haven't been able to do so far is get my Republican friends to get in the game of making things better in this country. Oh. For example, I was reading the other day, and I wrote the quote down so I don't misquote him. A quote from Senator Sununu when he decided that he wasn't going, Governor Sununu, when he decided he wasn't going to run for the Senate in New Hampshire. Here's what he said. They were all, for the most part, content with the speed at which they weren't doing anything. It was very clear that they just had to hold.
Enough. I can't.
I know.
First of all.
How many times did he tell the Sununu story, by the way? Like 3?
I don't know.
2?
By the way, Tina, I don't know if you noticed this, but an hour in, maybe a little over an hour, he said, hey, how much longer do you guys want to go? I could promise you that behind that wall, his people, his aides, his people White House staff were like a drunk at the bar, like, get him out of here, get the taxi, get him the hell out of here. I mean, he was joking around like I could go for another 3 hours. I couldn't take anymore. I couldn't take anymore.
He was
I'm
rambling
exhausted.
and not answering questions, really.
Oh, my God. It was like Weekend at Bernie's. Anyway, first of all, I want to, to be fair, I don't want it to be all, a piñata here. Listen, as compared to Trump,
okay, fair. It's not. It's better than Trump, yes.
Biden cannot convince the 20 to 30% of people who won't get vaccinated. That's not on him per se, that these people won't get vaccinated. Okay.
No,
so the fact that COVID is still a thing, it's not completely on him. What is on him, and I didn't see one goddamn question about this. Honestly, I'm just being honest, Tina. we could vaccinate 90% of America. Biden is not forcing, and he does have the authority to do this. He's not forcing Moderna or Pfizer to share their formula around the
which
world.
is wrong. This
Right.
to me is the biggest problem.
Right. So if we don't vaccinate, and he did mention this kind of, if we don't, not like through donations, he was talking about, oh, we've donated more. We don't need fucking donations to the rest of the world. We need other countries, even third world countries. They literally have the manufacturing centers ready to go. They don't have the formula.
That's right.
We need to bulk mass vaccinate people before the next variant, like yesterday. But because Biden is allowing big pharma to control things, the government largely funded Moderna and Pfizer's R&D and research, and it was government scientists working with these big pharma people. Okay, so he could, through I read a story, through some regulatory mechanism, force Pfizer and Moderna to share those vaccines, share the formulas. He's not doing that. So that's a large reason why, even if we all get vaccinated, there will still be mutations around the world. And who knows, some of those mutations might be even more contagious than Omicron, even more deadly than Omicron. So it's a real mess. And she froze again. So we'll try to get her back. So that's number one. Number two, when he says I've outperformed expectations. On what? On what? You literally ran on Build Back Better. You didn't run on a lot of policies, but one of the main policies you actually did run on was a $15 minimum wage. You literally preemptively surrendered on that within 5 minutes of your presidency. Am I being dramatic? You literally, early on, like the first month of your presidency, without even fighting for it, surrendered on a $15 minimum wage, citing the unelected parliamentarian, which was a joke. A joke. That's outperforming expectations. You ran on a public option. Anybody on this audience here, anybody talking about a public option anymore? We need Medicare for all. A public option to me is totally inadequate. But that's what he ran on. You don't hear about that. He ran on some type of student loan cancellation. You don't hear about that. Ran on police reform. Police reform. Meaning, let's give more money to the police. $2,000 checks. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I don't particularly know what he's referring to that he has outperformed. I think getting out of Afghanistan was good. The proof will be in the pudding. Remember, we got out of Iraq like a decade ago, but then you look back and, oh, wait, we still have 4,000 or 5,000 troops there. We still have private contractors in Iraq. In Afghanistan, even though we got our troops out. Not to mention, we're starving Afghanistan right now with sanctions on the Taliban. But when he says, again, it's hard to distinguish whether he's delusional that he's outperformed expectations or they're just trying to put lipstick on a pig. Because the main things he's gotten done was the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, which was all temporary measures. So, yay! We cut child poverty in half for a year, but allowed it to be temporary for a year. So now that cut child poverty going to go right back up as parents lose those payments for their children. We got shots in arms. Great. You got a $1,400 check. How much is that $1,400 check helping you now, folks? I ask. So these were all neoliberal policies. These were all temporary policies that he's playing up, that he's outperformed. Colin, if we could now move on to go back to number 3, him on his Build Back Better plan.
My Build Back Better plan will address the biggest cost of working families face every day. No other plan will do more to lower the cost for American families. It cuts the cost for childcare. Many families, including the people sitting in this room, if they have children and they're working full-time, many families pay up to $14,000 a year for childcare in big cities, less than that in smaller ones. My plan cuts that in half. That will not only be a game changer for so many families' budgets, but it will mean so much for the nearly 2 million women who've left the workforce during the pandemic because of things like childcare. My Build Back Better plan cuts the price of prescription drugs.
So I played that because to me, the Build Back Better plan at the 3.5 trillion mark, to me, that's a compromise. We really need upwards of $6-7 trillion just on the climate piece, just on the climate catastrophe. We probably need closer to $7 to $10 trillion. Okay. So the 3.5 trillion Build Back Better plan, which was the Bernie compromise, so to speak, that would have at least been acceptable, but not completely what we need. But when Biden talks about his Build Back Better plan, this, and I'm not talking about the details because there are things in there that are good. This is, to me, the biggest failure of his presidency. We were gaslit. We were all gaslit. And I know because I was on the ground traveling in Iowa and New Hampshire and covering, the early primary states. I was in California on Super Tuesday. If Status Coup viewers, you watched me, the folks who fund Status Coup, statuscoup.com/join, you paid for us to cover the 2020 campaign. We were gaslit by MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, the Daily Beast, all of them. This guy is the pragmatic choice. This guy could work with Republicans. This guy could bridge the divide within the Democratic Party. This guy could get things done. Literally, he has been in fetal position for the last 7 months, allowing a coal baron from West Virginia and a senator wearing a pink wig in Arizona to hijack his presidency. And honestly, it's not just Manchin and Sinema. There are other corporate Democrats who agree with them on being obstructionists and, the filibuster and, knocking down these policies and Build Back Better, but they don't speak up and they let Manchin and Sinema be the fall guys and gals. But Biden chose not to go on offense against Manchin or Sinema. Biden chose not to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to go on offense against Manchin and Sinema. Biden could have held rallies in West Virginia. Biden could have held a rally in Arizona. Biden could have called them out straight up and point out, oh, these two just happen to get massive donations from big pharmaceutical companies, lobbyists, and other financial special interests that are lobbying against my Build Back Better plan. Biden could have done all this. He could have done a public pressure and shaming campaign. And you want to know something? Ro Khanna and others say, well, I don't know if it would have made a difference. Well, I think it would have made a difference. You think Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, they might be immoral. They might be corporate Neanderthals. They're also human. And at some point, human beings, they really don't like getting shamed nonstop. They really don't like getting pressured nonstop. They don't really want to be tarred and feathered by the president of the United States and then the media. Biden chose not to do any of that for 2 reasons. Number one, those same donors I just told you about, because we live in the United Corporations of America, those same donors that have bought off Sinema and bought off Manchin are the same exact donors Biden and the Democratic Party are trying to raise money from right now to fund the midterm elections, to fund the Senate races, to fund the House races, the governor's races. Kind of a conflict of interest. We can't go too on offense against Manchin and Sinema because the very donors lobbying against Build Back Better are the donors we're begging to fund our campaigns so that we could keep the Senate, keep the House. Just a minor conflict of interest there. And secondly, why Biden never went on offense about any of this. Biden is a Republican. He might be better than Republicans on social issues and things like that. Biden doesn't passionately believe. There is no record. He has no record of passionately believing in and fighting for the policies that were in Build Back Better. Universal pre-K, increasing elder care, the climate provisions, lowering prescription drug costs, expanding Medicare. He has no record of championing any of these things. What Biden is a champion of and what he has a fetish for is bipartisanship. That's what he has a fetish for. If I could just get some Republicans to sign on, we will sell to the American people a coupon to Denny's for a family of 4 as transformational. Yes, a coupon to Denny's for a family of 4, we'll sell that as transformational. Okay? So he wasn't super passionate about any of these things in Build Back Better. What he was passionate about is, let's make a deal. Whatever the deal is, let's make a deal. And then we'll sell it as a major accomplishment. That's what they just did on the infrastructure. That's what he's doing on the infrastructure deal. As Tina and I were just talking about, literally, the infrastructure deal is only $500 billion in new money, when experts have said very clearly, we need $3 to $4 trillion to keep up with our crumbling infrastructure. That infrastructure deal, $500 billion in new money. There are some good things in that. He was correct. Biden was correct when he said more money for rural broadband, which is really important for rural communities, indigenous communities for sure, who have literally indigenous communities around the country don't have reliable internet. Poor Black communities, even poor white communities. There is money for rural broadband in there. When he says the infrastructure deal is going to fix all the lead pipes in the country and give you clean water, that is Build Back bullshit. There is not enough money in the Build Back Better plan, the infrastructure plan, to replace all of the lead service lines in this country. There's not. Trust me. I've been living and breathing water contamination for years. I know this topic. There's not enough money in the infrastructure deal to replace all the lead pipes in this country. And by the way, the open secret, even if you replace all the lead pipes in this country, that's unfortunately not going to guarantee you clean water, because there's all sorts of other contaminants in your water. So, I'm not trying to just batter him over the head. I'm trying to be fair. But the truth is, he's not exactly being accurate, or he's not exactly being realistic in his accomplishments. He's embellishing quite a bit. Thank you, Eddie, $5 in the super chat. Great work, Jordan. Keep going. Thank you, Eddie. Keep those super chats coming. And might I add, if you are new to Status Coup, please subscribe to this channel. Also, please, if you can, we are one of the only independent outlets that actually leave the studio and go out and report on the ground on important stories all over this country. We haven't been on the road in the last few weeks because, frankly, I've been trying to avoid getting COVID twice. So I haven't traveled during this latest Omicron surge. But as cases are going down, we want to get back on the road and covering important work. But we can't print money like the Federal Reserve. So we need you. So if it's within your means, please support Status Coup. You can become a member for as low as $5 a month. We're going to do our members only call next week on Zoom. So that's one of the perks of being a member, our monthly members only call through Zoom. There's other perks, behind the scenes content. We have a Discord with our members. So please, if you can, sign up, statuscoup.com/join for as low as $5 a month. Can we move on now to number 6, Manchin and Sinema?
Republican colleagues, but right now your top 2 legislative priorities, your social spending package and voting rights legislation, are stalled, blocked by your own party after months of negotiation. You are only guaranteed control of Washington for 1 more year before the midterms. Do you need to be more realistic and scale down these priorities in order to get something passed?
No, I don't think so. When you say more realistic, I think it's extremely realistic to say to people, because let me back up. You all really know the politics in this country and your networks and others. You spend a lot of time, which I'm glad you do, polling this data, determining what the American people's attitudes are, et cetera. American people overwhelmingly agree with me on prescription drugs. They overwhelmingly agree with me on the cost of education. They overwhelmingly agree with me on early education. They overwhelmingly go on the list on child care. And so we just have to make the case of what we're for and what the other team's not for. Look, we knew all along that a lot of this was going to be an uphill fight. And one of the ways to do this is to make sure we make the contrast as clear as we can. And one of the things that I think we're going to have to do is just make the case. I don't think there's anything unrealistic about what we're asking. I'm not asking for castles in the sky. I'm asking for practical things the American people have been asking for a long time. A long time. And I think we can get it done.
Okay.
You're not going to scale.
So what was amazing about that to me, and this goes back to what I was just saying, he's right. He's right. The American people agree with you. The American people are for these policies. So why haven't you gone out often and aggressively against the two Democratic senators blocking all of this? The American people are behind you. If they saw their president actually out there fighting, calling out the two Republicans within the Democratic, well, most of the Democrats are basically Republicans, but calling out Manchin and Sinema and pointing out that they're not moderate. No, these are extremists. It's not moderate to oppose and deprive policies that 70% or higher of Americans want. Universal pre-K, enhanced elder care, child tax credit, massive investment in climate. It's not moderate. That's extreme. I wish Bernie would have talked like this during the debate. He should have been calling Biden the radical, not him. So he's right on that the American people support the policies and Build Back Better. The problem is he doesn't actually go out and fight. He doesn't actually go out and point this out. He refuses to call out the two senators that are obstructing his agenda. Because again, I don't believe there's any evidence or record that he truly champions these policies, that he truly wants to fight for these policies. Because you want to know something? Say what you want about Lyndon B. Johnson. He doubled down on the Vietnam War. He did a lot of other bad things. Do you think Lyndon B. Johnson, who was known for being a bloodthirsty political hound and just, buckling other politicians by the knees if they were in his way, do you think Lyndon B. Johnson would let a coal baron, a corrupt senator from West Virginia, stop his agenda? Or a weird, eccentric senator wearing a pink wig or blue wig from Arizona to literally have the power or have more power than him? Do you really think Lyndon B. Johnson would have allowed that? Of course not. And this isn't an endorsement of him. I mean, he did some good things with the Great Society programs, did some terrible things with Vietnam. But Biden has acted, and the media has acted like there's just nothing he could do. Manchin and Sinema. Well, you want to know something? Joe Manchin, there's evidence that he can get hot under the collar. When Bernie Sanders literally did something mild, wrote an op-ed piece in a West Virginia newspaper calling out Manchin. So Bernie wrote a newspaper piece in a West Virginia newspaper. Manchin flipped his shit. Reports that Manchin flipped his shit. Do you know that AOC's former chief of staff, Corbin Trent is his name? Do you know that he and somebody else that used to work for AOC, they created a super chat. Well, yes, leave a super chat. They created a super PAC. And one of the first things they did, this was back in January of 2021, is they put out radio ads in West Virginia going after Manchin for being against the $2,000 checks. That mild pressure on Manchin, he started walking back his public statements of being against the $2,000 checks. So there is evidence that Joe Manchin can be pressured. There is evidence that Joe Manchin can be shamed. Frankly, if the president would publicly go after Kyrsten Sinema, which would then give the bat signal to the rest of the Democrats to go after Kyrsten Sinema, there's evidence she could be shamed. But again, there's the basic conflict of interest that Biden will not go after Manchin and Sinema, because going after Manchin and Sinema would mean going after the donors. And Biden is not going to go after Manchin and Sinema because he's not going to go after the donors. Why? Because Biden and the Democratic Party are desperately begging the donors for money right now to fund the Democratic Party's defense of the House and the Senate. Senate campaigns are expensive. House campaigns are expensive. The Democrats refuse to actually, do small dollar fundraising and try to just run on popular policies like Bernie and other progressives have. So they're still dialing for dollars the majority of the time, still begging Wall Street for money, begging big oil for money, begging big pharma for money, begging the military industrial complex for money. So he's not going to go after Manchin and Sinema because he doesn't want to bite the hand of the very donors that they're begging for money right now. It's your basic conflict of interest, folks. So that's it. Let me move on to one or more other clips. He says, oh, this one I really made my skin crawl. Colin, go to number 10 about Biden was asked about the black community.
A lot of questions about voting rights, Mr. President, but I want to ask you about black voters, one of your most loyal constituencies.
Yep.
I was in Congressman Clyburn's district yesterday in South Carolina. You opened this news conference talking about him. I spoke to a number of black voters who fought to get you elected, and now they feel as though you are not fighting hard enough for them and their priorities. And they told me they see this push on voting rights more as a last-minute PR push than it is a legitimate effort to get legislation passed. So what do you say to these black voters who say that you do not have their backs as you promised on the campaign trail?
I've had their back. I've had their back my entire career. I've never not had their back. And I started on the voting rights issues long, long ago. That's what got me involved in politics in the first place. And I think part of the problem is, look, there's significant disagreement in every community on whether or not the timing of assertions made by people has been in the most timely way. So I'm sure that there are those who are saying that why didn't Biden push John Lewis bill as hard as he pushed it the last month? Why didn't he push it 6 months ago as hard as he did now? The fact is that there's a timing.
Yeah. So at this point, I think he was kind of really losing steam. First of all, thank you for the super chat. President's $5. I'm sorry, Jordan, but why do you still give people like Biden the benefit of the doubt? He's a joker. What are you watching? I've been hammering Biden for the last hour. Benefit of the doubt? What are you talking about? Thanks for the super chat. What benefit of the doubt? I've been going after him like clip by clip. I don't know what you mean. Benefit of the doubt. There's no benefit of the doubt here. I've been pretty critical. First of all, and I'm a white guy, so I'm not speaking for black people, but I covered the campaign. I cover a lot of black communities. I've had their backs my entire career. This is a Trump level lie. This is the author of the crime bill. And yeah, people will say, well, Jordan, the black community supported it. Yeah, there was a lot of people in the black community that didn't support the crime bill. And you know who? He voted for it. Bernie voted for the crime bill, but he gave a floor speech saying, I'm voting for it because it has the violence against women provisions. But this has a real grave threat, talking about the crime bill. Bernie said in 1994, this is a real threat of ushering in a new era of mass incarceration, which he was, of course, right about. But Biden has had the backs of the black community. Biden literally constructed not literally, Biden literally drafted the bill that constructed, a sea of new prisons that house mostly black men for nonviolent crimes. This is the man who's had the back of the black community. Biden palled around with Strom Thurmond, a segregationist senator in the 1970s and 80s. Biden was against busing in black students to white schools. Remember, Biden lied and said, the media never called him out, lied and said he was arrested in apartheid South Africa when Nelson Mandela was freed from jail. What? I've had the backs of the black community. Not to mention other things, like Biden was one of the leading Democrats pushing deregulation of Wall Street. Deregulation of Wall Street, I give you the 2008 financial crash, which was in large part because of the deregulation of Wall Street. And by the way, you know who disproportionately got screwed by the 2008 financial crash? Black homeowners and Hispanic. So this guy has had the back of the black community? No, this guy has shown up at churches in black communities, blown a lot of smoke up their ass, and leaned on people like James Clyburn, who are beloved in the black community, while frankly screwing the black community. Go look who James Clyburn gets the most money from. He gets the most money of any congressperson from pharmaceutical companies. That's James Clyburn. So, I can't believe that he has the audacity to say, and this is something that I really, I think was one of Bernie's biggest failures. He let Biden sell that he's, been on the front lines for the black community his whole career. I think the thinking in Bernie's campaign, was Bernie voted for the crime bill, so, he can't really go after Biden for the crime bill, this and that. Yes, there was a way of doing it. There was a way of doing it where Bernie could have said, here's why I voted for the crime bill. At the time, I predicted that it would create mass incarceration, which it did, which Biden won't admit it did. Because Biden to this day pretends and lies that the crime bill did not create the era of mass incarceration. It absolutely did. And Biden, during the campaign, pretended that, he just said, well, black people supported it, blah, 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 blah. It's crazy. It's crazy. And you want to know something? At this point, I think that unless something radically changes, it does seem like the Republicans are going to win in a wipeout in November. And part of that is, again, I'm white. I'm not speaking for the black community. At a certain point, black people aren't going to keep just coming out for you. Yeah, they came out in 2020. A lot of, the data shows Biden won. Yes, suburban voters. Biden won because more black people came out in Atlanta for him. That's why he won Georgia. Biden won because more black people came out in Detroit. It's a big reason he won Michigan. Biden won because more black people came out in Milwaukee. Big reason he won Wisconsin. More black people came out compared to Hillary in 2016. So we're already seeing depression in the black, suppression in the black voting base. Stacey Abrams had a scheduling conflict, couldn't appear on stage with Biden when he went to Georgia to talk about voting rights. The head of the Black Votes Matter, which is one of the biggest black voting right groups, he boycotted Biden's speech. So at a certain point, the Democrats seem to think that no matter what, if they just sell it and market it, hey, we'll send out fundraising campaigns and we'll point out that the Republicans are trying to take away your vote. They absolutely are. The Republicans are absolutely trying to take away the vote of black people. So, but at a certain point, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Enough. It's, again, I'm a white dude. I am not. I want to be clear. Voting rights is a major issue. I understand why many black people vote on that issue. However, voting, once you're able to vote, does your vote actually matter? That's another issue. So yes, voting rights and Republican voter suppression is a critical issue. It's one of the top issues of our time. But Biden got in there, and what has he done for the black community? He's abandoned police reform. He's abandoned a public option, which would have helped the black community and Latino community. He abandoned a $15 minimum wage, certainly would have helped everyone, much less black people. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, and the last clip, and keep those super chats coming. Let me read this one. Presents, $5. I hear the criticism loud and clear, but you seem to genuinely entertain the idea that he might want to do the right thing and how he could do it. No, I've been saying Biden isn't fighting for these things because he doesn't passionately believe in these things. He's not fighting for the things in Build Back Better. He's not going on offense against Manchin and Sinema because he's not passionate about these things. The only thing he's passionate about is going like that. Let's make a deal, and then let's sell that deal which is usually rump roast, as transformational change. So do I think he wants to do the right thing? No, I think he's in over his head. I think he's probably 7 to 8 years past his expiration date, politically speaking. I'm not saying dead. He's clearly just past his prime. And by the way, his prime was corrupt. Not that he's not corrupt now. He's clearly, to me, in over his head, overwhelmed. He's an older man. I'm not saying he's got, some things were trending about him. I'm not a doctor. It just seems like he's in over his head. It seems like he's past his, politically speaking, expiration date. But do I have beliefs that Joe Biden passionately wants to do the right thing? No, I don't. Jay Sharp, $10. Be glad when you get to go out on the road, and thanks for staying with my hometown Flint. Thank you. By the way, it is very disheartening as a journalist. Story after story after story. I keep breaking on Flint, and it takes a lot to break these stories. It's not like you just come up with get the information in a day. It takes a lot of digging and a lot of investigation to break these stories that I've been breaking on Flint. And Colin, if you don't mind putting the tweet with the story that's at the top of my Twitter, if you could put it in the super chat and the description, if people don't have it, because I did break a major story on Flint on Monday for The Guardian. So I've been going on a couple shows about it. As of now, the Flint Journal is ignoring it, as they've ignored every other story I've broke. The Detroit Free Press is ignoring it. The Detroit News is ignoring it. You want to know why? Because the Michigan media and the national media, they're in on the cover-up. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that to be dramatic. They are in on the Flint water cover-up. They do not want the details of my reporting on this cover-up to get out, because for many reasons, they want this to be over, and they want it to be considered over, and that the situation is resolved. It's not resolved. And if you read my story, that again is at the top of my Twitter, at Jordan Chariton. If you read that story, and please retweet that story, retweet the tweet, like it, share it. There was major financial fraud that led to the poisoning of Flint, Michigan. And the current Attorney General of Michigan and her team, by all appearances, based on our reporting, has swept it under the rug, that financial fraud. So follow the money, read my story, and share it. And thank you for the super chat. Thank you for another super chat from Austin for Congress, $2. We need independent people running for office. Hey, at this point, we just need people that are willing to fight. I don't care what they are, independent, Democrat, alien. We got a lot of people in office right now that are not willing to fight, And we need to change that. Colin, the last clip. Joe Biden, remember Bernie kept calling Biden his friend and my friend Joe and all this? Well, Joe Biden doesn't exactly act like Bernie Sanders is his friend. In fact, there's been a lot of times that Joe Biden, not so subtly, mocks Bernie Sanders. Let's play this clip.
I don't know how that is pointed to the left. If you may recall, you guys have been trying to convince me that I am Bernie Sanders. I'm not. I like him, but I'm not Bernie Sanders. I'm not a socialist. I'm a mainstream Democrat, and I have been. And mainstream Democrats have overwhelmed. If you notice, the 48 of the 50 Democrats supported me in the Senate on virtually everything I've asked.
Oh, boy. Bernie, I give him credit. He woke up millions of people. He brought millions of people into the political process. He woke up a lot of people that were asleep. He regalvanized a lot of older voters that were just fed up with the political process and got them back in the game. A lot of these progressive organizations that you see, Sunrise Movement, Our Revolution, et cetera, many of whom I don't think are particularly doing much, but that's a different story. They wouldn't exist if not for Bernie's political campaigns. A lot of local candidates wouldn't have ran without Bernie. So he deserves a lot of credit. I'm not Jimmy Dore. I'm not calling Bernie Sanders Lucifer or a sellout or a fraud. I think that's absurd. I don't think you need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You could appreciate what he has done while also criticizing him. But Jesus Christ, Bernie Sanders, oh my God, he literally has continued to call this man his friend and to support the president publicly. Remember Bernie said, let's get rid of Trump and then we'll fight Biden on day one? That's what Bernie said. Let's get rid of Trump and we'll fight Biden on day one. Well, it's now a year later. I haven't seen a fight against Biden from Bernie. Have you? It's not all Bernie's fault. It's not all on him. But Bernie has pretty much stayed quiet. I mean, recently he kind of came out and said the Democratic Party is abandoning the working class, but he has not publicly criticized President Biden. He has not called for Biden to do more. He has not called out Biden for allowing himself to, allowing Manchin and Sinema to steamroll him. He has not called on Biden to rally the country. And he has continued, in my view, naively, to believe that Biden is like his friend, because when everybody else in the early days of Bernie being a congressman or a senator, everybody else kind of like crapped on Bernie, but Biden was nice to him. Like that's the story. And Biden and him became friendly. Well, okay, but are you there to make friends or are you there to get shit done? I mean, this man is not so subtly mocked you time and time again. I'm not Bernie. I'm not a socialist. No. To be clear, Biden is a socialist. He is a corporate socialist. That's what Biden is. He believes in socialism for his donors. He believes in socialism for Jeff Bezos, for Elon Musk, for Bill Gates, for Warren Buffett, for the Waltons. He believes in socialism. He just doesn't believe in socialism for working people. So, and that was one of Bernie's themes, corporate socialism. He should have just said on stage, oh no, Biden, you are a socialist, just for the rich. Let's name your biggest donors because they're socialists too. So, yeah, I mean, it's just sad. It's sad seeing comments like that, which, by the way, that was one of the few completely truthful things Biden said. He is not Bernie. I'm not Bernie Sanders. That was accurate. He's not. He's not. And unfortunately, Bernie, who knows? Bernie's 80 years old. Maybe he's just tired. Maybe he doesn't have it in him to fight. But at a certain point, Bernie Sanders, silence is complicity. Bernie Sanders should be calling out Biden for not doing enough. Bernie Sanders should be calling out Biden for not forcing Moderna and Pfizer to share their formulas with the third world, their vaccine formulas. Bernie Sanders should be calling out Biden for abandoning a $15 minimum wage and not fighting for it now. Bernie Sanders should be calling out Biden for not keeping his promise and fighting for a public option, which isn't even enough. Bernie Sanders should be calling out Biden and demanding that he use executive action to cancel student debt. Bernie Sanders, not at this moment, because he's 80 years old and I don't want him to get COVID. But who's to stop Bernie from doing rallying a very deflated progressive base right now? Their progressives in this country are very deflated, and they're, in my view, ready to be activated. But they need somebody to activate them. I'm not saying it's all about Bernie, but if Bernie Sanders and other progressives started naming names, started going on offense against Biden, Pelosi, and Schumer, started going on offense demanding that they don't allow Manchin and Sinema to obstruct the entire agenda, you might have a better chance at buckling some knees politically. But it's just really a shame to see those comments from Biden, because Bernie basically got suckered in by this guy. Bernie, and I know for a fact there are people in Bernie's campaign, sources of mine, that were pleading with him to take off the gloves with Joe Biden, just like they were pleading with him years earlier to take off the gloves against Hillary Clinton. It just wasn't in Bernie. It wasn't in Bernie to do it, unfortunately. So let me read some more super chats. Alisa, $10. The U.S. is burning, climate issues, poisoning Flint residents, economic Hunger Games, massive unemployment, racial health disparities, mass incarceration, pandemic, president fading away during speeches. He was fading away. I mean, I'm sorry. It was as clear as day. After about 45 minutes to an hour, it should have been lights out. When Biden was making jokes to the press, how much longer you want to go? 3 hours? I could only imagine behind that wall, his staff, like the drunk at the bar, like, get him out of here, get the taxi. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Let me read another one. And Colin, if you could get my story, I just want to show on screen the Guardian story before we go. Austin for Congress, $5. In a world political spectrum view view Democrats as to the right of that spectrum. Yep. And you want, to be clear, Austin and the audience, I want to be clear. I'm covering Biden really critically. The Republican Party is awful. The Republican Party is not your friend. The Republican Party literally is supporting things like a bounty hunter abortion system in Texas. The Republican Party all over this country is supporting voter suppression so black people and young people have a harder time to vote. The Republican Party, wants to continue to shower rich people with tax cuts and deregulate everything. The Republican Party, as we're literally burning, doesn't want to change a thing as far as the climate catastrophe. So don't get it twisted that the Democrats are bad. The Republican parties are equally as bad, if not worse. But the problem is, what elevates right-wingism? What allows Republicans to thrive? What allows Republicans to win governorships where they could suppress the vote? What allows Republicans to retake the House and the Senate? Yes, gerrymandering too. But what allows that when you don't have an opposition party? I don't know about you guys. When I get the choice of Coca-Cola or Diet Coke, I'm taking Coca-Cola. And Coke isn't good for you, by the way. Very bad. Okay? So when you don't have a real alternative to this, whatever the Republican Party is now, like your usual chamber of commerce, let's give rich people, shower them with tax cuts, deregulate, and then add on, the conspiracy movement and QAnon and whatever else. January 6th and all these other things, when you don't actually have a populist alternative to that, when you don't actually have a real working class alternative to that, it makes that authoritarian right-wingism thrive. It depresses turnout among young people, black voters, Hispanic voters, working class whites, working class black voters. It depresses turnout. It continues to depress turnout among the largest voting bloc in America, the non-voter. And the Republican base, they're not depressed. Their turnout isn't depressed. Trump got more votes in 2020 than he got in 2016. So that's what we're dealing with. I don't want you to get twisted that we're better off for Republicans. Honestly, we got a two-party duopoly and they're all fucking awful. But this democratic fecklessness, this democratic corporatism, this neoliberalism is what is allowing the Republicans to take power all over this country. Yes, gerrymandering is a big part, and voter suppression is absolutely a big part. But the fact that if you're given a choice between right-wing Coca-Cola and left-wing Diet Coke, I'm going with right-wing Coca-Cola. Tina,
Yeah.
are you back?
I'm sorry. I'm back. Now that it's almost over.
So I was about to wrap, but any parting thoughts? And you could call your internet company and tell them to stop fucking with you.
Yeah.
Any parting thoughts? Because I was trying to make it clear, I don't want people to get it twisted that Biden and the Democrats are awful. Vote for Republicans. I think they're both awful. But what is allowing Republicans to thrive, right, is Biden isn't doing anything.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's put aside all of this shit, Tina. Let's say, for argument's sakes, whatever, he can't get Mansion in cinema, even if he resurrected Jesus to convince them.
But hang on, can I stop you there? What has he actually done to get them in line? This is what I don't understand. I don't see him making any real efforts in that area. I mean, maybe there's been some behind the scenes conversations. I'm sure that there has been, but he's not using his presidency as a bully pulpit. He could be coming to their backyards, helping with activists in those areas. He seems very laissez-faire about the whole thing. I think he's fine with Manchin and Sinema doing what they're doing. He has somebody to blame.
Well, while you were trying to figure out your internet, I was pointing to my United Corporations of America flag, because that's why he's not doing it. Because there's a basic tension here, Tina. There's a basic conflict of interest. If he were to go, excuse my French, balls to the wall against Manchin and Sinema or any other Democrats that were blocking Buildback Better, this and that, if he were to call out their donors, if he were to call out, frankly, hey, Joe Manchin, you remember your daughter who was this like CEO of a pharmaceutical company and she jacked up the price of EpiPen, which killed people, and she's never gone to jail for it? If he was to go aggressively, well, I don't know, the same donors that he'd be calling out and the Manchin and Sinema that he'd be going after, well, Manchin and Sinema, their donors are the very donors that Biden and Pelosi and Schumer now are begging for money for Senate campaigns, House campaigns, governorships. So it's kind of like, if I'm going to go on offense against these two moderate Democrats who are literally paid off, just like most of the Democrats.
That's it. I don't even think that it's that they're moderate. It's that they're paid off.
And they're extreme. Yeah.
And they're, would you imagine a different scenario where Bernie Sanders was president? I think he would be using the presidency as a bully pulpit. I don't think he would accept the stance that Manchin and Sinema are taking. I don't think he would do that. I think he would fight for something. So now, whether or not he'd be successful, we could have that conversation, but at least he'd make an effort. Like right now we have, it reminds me of, so the younger ones will not know who the Weather Underground is, but the Weather Underground was this, 1960s revolutionary group. The thing I think they're most known for is putting a bomb in the Pentagon. But I interviewed one of their members when he got out of jail 2 years ago, and he said something to me that just stuck in my brain for forever because I think it perfectly exemplifies the two-party system. I asked him, at his age, like, do you still, see, the Democrats as better, the Republicans as worse, both parties bad? Asked him about what he thought on that. And his response was really simple. He said, there's the fuckers and there's the motherfuckers. And I knew exactly what he meant. It was the greatest response. So, and I think it's really apt. It describes it perfectly. So I don't know. I don't know how you get this fixed because you have a bot Congress, you have two-party system that serves the same donor class, and you have the working class continuing to suffer. And the thing that kills me the most, though, is stemming out of this. One of the outcomes that is really bad is the radicalization that we're seeing, right? So people are angry. They don't know where to direct their anger. We talked about this last week where I was trying to make the point that being anti-establishment isn't a theory. If it's not moored to something, it's just simply being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian, right? You don't have any principle behind that. And that's a very dangerous place to be, in my opinion. So I think this is why you see folks that were Bernie supporters now, becoming alt-right. Because they're anti-establishment, right? They're angry and they're just looking to just rail at the system. And if that anger doesn't have any direction to go in, if it's not moored in principle, it can be very dangerous because people get radicalized. They go, to further and further extremes. They go down rabbit holes. I think a lot of the anti-vaxxer sentiment is rooted in anger towards, the government. I don't think it's necessarily rational, but it's understandable. So what bothers me is that you would think at some point the important players in either party would recognize this and see how bad that is, not only for society, but also for them eventually.
Right. I actually think that most of the Democratic leadership think that if they just dust off the old playbook, send out the fundraising emails, this is the most important election of our lifetime. This is the most important election of our lifetime. Democracy is on the ballot. Don't worry about the fact that you're working 3 jobs. Don't worry about the fact that you're having to choose between medicine and groceries. Don't worry about the fact that, you might have a $20,000 bill from your hospital stay for COVID. Don't worry
Right.
about the fact that police are still fucking cracking your skulls in if you're black people. Don't worry about the fact that you're getting union busted if you even try to fight. Don't worry about the fact that, oh, hey, you're being told to come into work while you're COVID positive. The list goes on and on and on. This is the most important election this is the most important election of our lifetime. We're fighting for democracy.
They've said that too many times. They've said it too many times. Nobody buys that anymore. It's like, how many times did you cry wolf in the past? Maybe this time it was worse than previous times. I will grant that. But did it matter? You guys have made this your argument for so long. And the reason it's gotten worse is because you're making this argument. You're constantly telling people, vote the lesser of two evils. And each time you get this ratchet effect of worser evils, right? It doesn't come all the way back.
Right.
So now we're at a place where we're really making a decision between a neo-fascist, and I don't know what to frame Biden as at this point, but when we could have had somebody like a Bernie Sanders, like none of this makes sense. If you really are concerned about democracy, if you really are concerned about egalitarian principles per se, these are your worst picks. But this is what the American people were given.
Absolutely. And on that optimistic note, sorry you couldn't be with us for the whole time.
I know. I'm sorry too.
But also, this is another problem. Monopolies. Tina's paying, Tina's paying.
I pay $120 a month for my internet, and it's like,
and it doesn't work.
On and off again problems. The Spectrum. They're just terrible.
Right. So thank you very much, Tina, for joining me for the portion you can. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. I hope I wasn't unfair to Mr. Biden, but frankly, that was about as delusional as it gets. And it was painful at times to watch. So we're going to keep calling it as we see it. I will remind people, Status Coup is funded by you. If you want us to be able to afford Tina when she gets back out there to cover protests and other things, if you want me to be able to afford to go out on the road, we need you. We need you. There is a whole cottage industry on the internet and the left right now doing reactions on other people's shows and reactions on commentary on other people's commentary on other people's commentary. It's just this this hot take reaction machine, and it's exhausting, honestly. And for whatever commentary analysis, great. I love a lot of it, but to actually continue on the ground reporting, and we are going to be getting back on the ground, particularly as cases go back down, it costs money. So if you support actual journalism, if you support the story I just broke in Flint, the only reason I was able to break that story and many other stories about Flint is because you've paid for me to keep going to Flint. We don't just learn information as journalists by facts. You have to continue. Right. You have to continually show up and cover things and build sources and dig, and in many cases knock on doors, which I've been doing for years in Flint and elsewhere. So if you can, if you can't afford it, understand. But if you can, $5 a month, 16 cents a day equals $5 a month. StatusCoup.com/join. You can become a member for $5 a month. We're doing our monthly members only call, which hopefully Tina could join if her internet agrees. We're going to do that. We're going to do that next month. Next week. We're going to do our members only call next week. Usually it's 7:00 Eastern time. Usually go about an hour or two.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. People should definitely tune in for that.
Yeah, I might drink whiskey this time because I need it.
Yeah.
But we'll do our members only call. The other thing is, please sign up as a member, but also follow us on Twitter @StatusCoup. You could also join our text list because YouTube doesn't often notify people when we're live. So you could join our text message list. So you'll get a text message when we're live. That's statuscoup.com/text. Statuscoup.com/text. You don't get charged or anything. You just get a text message when we're live. That's another great way for us to kind of get around YouTube suppression. So @StatusCoup, statuscoup.com/text. We're on Instagram. That's instagram.com/statuscoup. We're on a lot of places, but most importantly, please, $5 a month, statuscoup.com/join. 2 more super chats came in. Meme boy, $20. We've seen nothing change for decades. So impotence turns into apathy. Yeah. Absolutely.
I agree.
And I
understand why people are angry or turned out. They either are like, I'm not voting anymore. What difference does it make? Absolute apathy in that, or nihilist almost in some areas, or they're just projecting anger everywhere. But it's all understandable. It's very understandable. And I just don't see the will to fix it. It's very bad.
Right.
Worst I've seen.
Absolutely. And Dave L, $5. Maddow is actually covering the Flint story now and as a decidedly spun version of it.
Really?
Maddow's covering my Flint story. If that's happening, please email me. info@statuscoup.com. If that's happening, I'd be kind of surprised if Rachel Maddow's covering my Flint story. But if she is, that would be wonderful. If she's spinning it, I have an idea why she's spinning it. But yeah, email me if you can, info@statuscoup.com, to tell me about how Rachel Maddow is covering the Flint story, because I haven't seen her cover it at all. So, or anybody cover it at all. So that would be great if you can let me know what she's covering. That's all I got, folks. Thank you, Tina. Thanks to the audience. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.